Hello, I'm Rachel from Douentza Garden in Ireland, and you are very welcome to my garden in August. Now today we're going to take a little trip around the garden. Well, perhaps we won't trip, we'll stroll at a leisurely pace. We'll have a look at what's in bloom, what's looking good, discuss what isn't looking good, and just enjoy the nice weather, because at last this year we have a break, and I think this is the third day of sunshine, so everybody is like rushing to the beach. Not me. I'm staying here to enjoy what's looking good in my garden and to share it with you. There have been a few changes and I am going to show you those as well. So I guess without further ado, let's get on with the video. Oh, I nearly forgot to explain some things to you if you're new here. So I garden in Southern Ireland. The garden, Douentza, it's an acre in a rural setting, and I guess I garden in what roughly equates to as hardiness zone 9. Now we don't have that system here, so just take that as a rough guide for what I might get through the winter and might not. However, having said all that, we have had so much rain since autumn last year, I think, that things that would normally be hardy for us have just rotted in the ground. But let's not dwell on that now. So we've come through into the garden through the arches there, and it leads down a path here, and I'm just backing away from you. Let's hope I don't fall. And this is a kind of a shady space, kind of enclosed with lots of tall planting. The flowers in here on the left hand side, on your left hand side, are Francoa, and this is one that tolerates sun or shade and was grown by my son from seed years ago, and it's just really quite a reliable doer. It surrounds one of our resident gargoyles, and this one is called Dr. Acula, and he's looking very grumpy today. I think he's done something to the flowers that are next to him, because you'll notice that the ones right next to him have gone over first. They're kind of withered. Maybe it was his bad breath. And just across from him is his girlfriend, Misanthropy, and she's surrounded by a beautiful red monarda. This one's called Cambridge Scarlet, and it's my absolute favourite. I love it for its tall, beautifully deep, rich in colour flowers, but I also love it for the fact that it's a really good doer and just, well, it just is a reliable flowerer. We also have several Solenum plants in here, and those of you who followed the channel for a while will recall when I planted them here. Was it last year? The year before? I'm not sure. But this is a beautiful airy plant that reminds us of so many native wild things, but it's kind of well behaved in a garden setting. It has a light airy foliage, really very tactile, and reddish stems topped with white umbels. I was down here marvelling at it just yesterday with my daughter, and she said some very uncomplimentary things. She said, "This is not worthy of your garden," whereas for my part I think it's exactly the opposite. I think this is just such a beautiful thing that I'm very happy has part in the garden. And whereas this isn't the character of planting generally, it's always good to have variety. Well, I want to show you this stump right here, and I do it because I don't want to always just concentrate on the good things. And this is the stump of a giant euphorbia that we removed last autumn. Now generally speaking these days, if I want to get rid of a tree or a large bush, we don't have the capacity to actually remove it from the garden. So the process is to cut it to the ground and to just worry it for a couple of years afterwards. So many things will resprout if you cut them down, and you just have to be on top of that. Some plants like Sambucus, for example, will be very persistent, and you may need to pull up new shoots for maybe 5 years after you originally cut it down. But I think this euphorbia has taken the hint and has decided that, yeah, okay, not wanted. It does look a bit ugly now, but I have planted things around it, and with a short period of time, even if I don't manage to remove the stump as it dies off completely, it will be covered up with the surrounding planting, and that's good. I'm going to put a few small things with small roots in next to it, because it's difficult to get big things in beside because the root is still in there, the root of the euphorbia. At the end of the path we have a wheel, a wooden wheel, which is kind of eye-catching and draws you down to explore further, and a flurry of white cosmos. And moving over here a bit further into the garden, I just want to have a quick word about my buxus, or my box balls and hedge. And you may recall I had box blight, and I treated it, and the buxus has done quite well. Now, I did make the decision to cut it back this year, and the result is that like the new growth was cut off, and you can actually see some of the damage, but I do see that they are regrowing again for a second time. So fingers crossed that I have, well, come to grips with the pathogen. However, it should be noticed that this pathogen remains in the soil for up to 5 years after you first, well, it just remains dormant for 5 years. And up here past the cedar tree, I want to tell you about my Annabelle, hydrangea Annabelle, which you saw me plant a couple of years ago, and wow, this year, just look at her. And of course, it's been such a good year for hydrangeas. With all the wet we've had, they have just done brilliantly. And Annabelle is no exception. Now, I did prune her correctly in spring, cutting her hard back, and that has given rise to these enormous puffballs, which are thankfully holding themselves up, because that's always a danger with dear old Annabelle. Her flowers are so big and so large that very often the plant won't support the weight and she ends up lying on the ground. But she's struck a happy balance this year, just floating above the Cattleya, which is that yellow and red plant just below. So beautiful. I am really excited about how well this elephant ears or Virginia has done underneath the inhospitable environment of a large conifer tree. Here it's dry and it's shady, and it's very, very acidy from the constant pine needles that fall down. And Virginia, which was just planted last autumn, has done so well. I mean, just look at it. And over here we have my long border, which is still looking pretty in orange. The alstroemeria is still holding on, but I will need to deadhead it again soon. And the lilies are coming into bloom with their gorgeous fragrance. Down this end of the garden we have the very tall white ones there on the left with a kind of yellow centre, or maybe you'd call them yellow, and they're very scented and very beautiful, and I don't have a name for them. And surprisingly, over there on the right, also very scented, is the lavin tree lily, which is supposed to get enormously tall, and yet you see the unnamed one on the left is actually taller than the lavin tree lily. But the tree lily is doing well, and well, I think they're just kind of both coming into flower at the same time, and they're a good complement. In the mid distance of this border we have an orange daylily, kind of pale orange compared to the alstroemeria, which is a deep orange. And this one is called Quanzo something or other, but it is, well, it's a very nice one. Unfortunately, it's kind of difficult for me to get in to deadhead it because it's right there in the middle of the border and I might damage things on the way in. And speaking of lilies, here at the very back of the long border is a lily that isn't in flower yet, and it is this really tall one. Ooh. It's hard to get in here. Okay, so here I am. This lily is called Black Beauty, and I always have a real problem making it stand upright. So this year what I've done is I've used tree stakes, and they have been supported by tree stakes. I've tied them to tree stakes. They're quite low so you can't see them, which of course is the whole point of supporting things in the first place. You don't want those supports to be seen. But look how tall they are. I mean, they're over 8 foot. I like this flexible plastic coated string to tie up the lilies with, because it's kind of soft so it doesn't damage the stems even if I pull them upright. Here's a corner I haven't shown very often, and here's the cotinus I didn't prune in spring. You know how normally I prune my cotinus for the big leaves. Well, that one just gets left as is because it fills in a nice empty space. But the fuchsia and the hedge of Hypericum hidcote are looking quite well now. Here's a plant I don't show very often, and it's Tucrium, filling in a nice bit of space here. It's one that seeds about. And over here, above the New Zealand tussock grass and below the Tetrapanix rex, we have an Impatiens tinctoria, which is quite an exotic creature, but does well in my garden. It's not one that seeds or is in any way a pest in nature, in this country anyway, but it's growing extra tall, I think, to get light, and I love that. Over here, the oak leafed hydrangea is beginning to get its autumn tinges. It does seem a bit early. And coming in here, I just want to show you this gorgeous, gorgeous flower I grew from seed. A few years ago, my son gifted me some packets of seeds for my birthday or for Christmas even, I can't remember. And anyway, his choice was not my choice, let's just say, but I sowed them anyway because a gift is a gift. And I am just astonished to see how big these beautiful, beautiful flowers are. Look at that. And you can see that I have 2 plants here. I think, did I only get 2 in the end? Yeah, maybe just 2. But the one on the right there is just coming into flower. So yeah, I'm going to have a succession of beautiful blue flowers. Just beside that bed we have where my main Sarracenia planters are. These are insectivores, and as you know, they're planted in a plastic basin in bog conditions and surrounded by stone, because I have a lot of stone in my garden. If you ever go digging here, you'll find a lot of stone. But I planted Stipa tenuissima all the way around it, which is my favourite short grass. And I like the contrast. I like the contrast of the hard stone and the soft, fluffy grass. But now, come up here because I want to show you something very exciting. And it is this new statue. Well, it's not new, but it's been recently put here. This is a statue I've had for years. It was buried deep in this border, and you know, it's really quite heavy to move. I hadn't decided where exactly I wanted it, and you know, you don't want to ask somebody to move it about if you're going to just say, oh, actually no, there, let's move it over there. So it stayed where it was for a while, and when I was weeding this year I thought, to hell with it, I'm going to move it out myself. So I did. I rolled the pedestal, and I think it looks really quite well here. And well, can you tell? The birds love it already. And here's something new in the garden. You saw me unboxing it, and this is how it looks when it's put in place. There's a second one over here underneath the weeping birch tree. I'm not sure this exactly goes with the tree because the tree has natural splodges anyway, but this is the tree that my grandson loves to hide under. So I put it here so that it would delight him. And so now we're going to head on over here. But one thing I do notice is that some plants just seem to flower for a very, very long time this year, which is great. Here's another super hydrangea, and this one is a macrophylla. So as you know, the macrophyllas usually respond to the soil. Acidic soil giving blue flowers and alkaline soil giving pink. But this is a white macrophylla, and I guess it belays its macrophylla parentage by the eyes in each of the flowers. So as my soil is acidic, the eyes are blue here, but it's a great doer and makes a big, beautiful bush that flowers reliably. Flopping a little bit this year, but well, we'll forgive it. And before we head on to the other side of the garden, I just wanted to show you my little birds on the pot tidy. We're now on the last lap of the garden tour, the last section, and this is Beijing Moon, a beautiful lily that I planted in the ground after keeping in a pot for a few years, and it is just beautifully scented. This section here is under process of being replanted, and this one was done last autumn. And one thing I am a real big fan of is the Linaria. This is Linaria peachy, and while it's just about going over now, it has flowered for the longest time and made quite a large bush in just one season. So I absolutely love it. It's kind of mishing together with the white thalictrum behind, but I think the two of them are just, well, gorgeous companions. And the pond is even welcoming us today with 2 water lilies that are open, and I think I see another one poking. And the dahlias have come into flower really very recently. They seem very slow this year, but it's great to have them. Also, they seem to have grown a lot shorter than they normally do. And my Echium Wilpretii is finally putting on a growth spurt. That nearly brings us to the end of the video. I will just point out another new addition to the garden, which is just behind me there, and it's a little stone owl that my son Joshy gifted to me years ago. Now I've had it for well, let me see, so that would be 9 years, and you've never noticed it in garden tours because it didn't have a pedestal up until now, and that meant it was down at ground level, and once the planting gets going in summer it got very obscured. So I'm very happy to give it its own pedestal now and just pop it here where it can be seen and appreciated. And with that, we really have come to the end of this garden tour. But I would like to point out to you that I make a garden tour at least once a month when the weather is right. I started this year in April, so if you want to see my April garden tour, there it is up there. There's the May one. Up here we have the June, and then July, which is the most recent one I made before this one. So if you want to see the progress of the garden through the seasons, do check those out. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you on the next video. Bye!